what's going on, boys and girls? We're here with another reaction video, and as you can tell, the whole topic of this entire video simply states the following: top 5 reasons why Linux isn't popular, the Linux market share. Here's my reaction. Shall we get into it? Because I never know how these videos are going to be. And this is from somebody completely different than the last 3 that I've done. Thank God. Because my level of stupid I can take is only so high. So let's roll into it and find out. Shall we? Now.
In this video, I'm going over 5 reasons Linux isn't more popular. So before we get into the top,
first off, like the intro. Second off, I love the fact that you're not playing fucking music with with your video like the last 4 videos I've listened to by certain other people, which drives me up a wall. Do a 40-minute video on that and see if you can even remotely understand what I mean, because it drove me up a wall listening to that same background track for 40 minutes. So thank you. Already an up in my book.
5, I want to go ahead and go over what the Linux market share is right now. So right now it sits about 1.5% to 2%, and it's bounced around this metric for about 5 years. I went back 10 years, and really there's not much change as far as Linux adoption. And these 5 reasons are why I believe it's just...
Okay, as far as Linux adoption rate, what are you using as a metric? That would be kind of nice to fucking know. Are you using, was it NetApps or whatever the hell it is? Cite some sources, please. That kind of info is actually, if you're going to make a claim, always cite the info that the claim you're making from. Are you going by the 1% of the Steam survey, hardware surveys? Citing where you're using as a statistic helps out tremendously to back up your argument.
Kind of set like this, and why it will continue to sit like this until they're actually changed. So let's go ahead and flip over to that. You'll see here the stat counter is a global stats thing where if you go to a website, it records your operating system and also like the browsers and other metrics, but a lot of people use this. I use it on my website, christitus.com, and you'll see Linux just stays pretty much right in that range. It started the year out at 1.68. It has bounced above that, and it's dropped to 1.64. So it's pretty stable right in there. But I wanted to give that metric to start out with so we have a basis of what's going on right now as far as Linux adoption goes. It's pretty much non-existent, but there are some bright spots, and I'm going to go over that as well.
So thank you for actually citing that, because that was actually going to be one of my biggest gripes thus far. So awesome. I like info. Info is good.
So let's go over reason number 1, Linux hasn't increased in adoption, and that is most users don't even know about it. I was over, at my mother-in-law's where I installed Linux on her machine, and she's been using it for over a year now, and she likes it. It works for her and does everything just fine. And I think the main reason why a lot of people don't fit into this mold is they just simply don't know about it. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, or just lack of information when it comes to Linux. And that mainly is because it doesn't cost any money, but at the same time, with no money, there's no marketing. So most actual people don't know about Linux, and that's why we haven't seen much adoption.
Lack of marketing, all too fucking true. We have foundations in Linux. FYI, this is being done on Linux, and cool on your mother for grandmother, whatever it was there, to be using Linux. Awesome, props. The lack of marketing is definitely a problem, and that's on the distributions and the companies. Hey, Red Hat, you're part of IBM. You just got paid $34 billion. You want to do some fucking marketing? That'd be great. Support the thing that you supposedly love so much.
Reason number 2, traditional attitudes. And what I mean by this is like the invasion of neckbeards or just people looking down on other people. Linux has some of this, hey, I am smarter than you, and if you don't know this, you're stupid kind of mentality. And I see this all the time on forums as a, IT professional. I've been in this space, more than 15 years, and I still see this all the time where, hey, this distro is better and you can run anything on it. And then you're like, well, there's not a simple package for that to install. And they're like, well, you just build it from source. And that's a problem because there's less than probably a percentage of the population that wants to build it from source or even would bother building it from source. So this is a major hiccup in the Linux environment. We need to make it easier for people to actually adopt Linux and not look down on them for their lack of knowledge, and also kind of standardize these things so your average user's not building a project from source just because it's not on their favorite distro. Me personally, I like Fedora, but a lot of times I'm like, oh, I need that package. And I'm like, oh, nobody's packaged it up. And I end up building it from source. That's not a viable option when we want mainstream adoption coming to Linux.
Traditional attitudes. The community is its own worst enemy at times. I think it depends on the community. You will find these same kind of fucking problems in Windows. Oh, just do a regedit. Well, a normal user is not going to fucking do a regedit. Mac users are the same way. You got the power users of anything, the ones that have been doing it forever. They are always going to look down at the new people. Let's be honest, most IT people tend to think most people who use a computer are morons. That's just the reality. Whether or not that's true, it's different. But the reality is, if you do IT, the generic assumption is, your audience and the people that you're dealing with, these are the put the coffee cup in the CD-ROM or the DVD tray kind of people. That's how most IT will view them. The problem is between the keyboard and the fucking chair. Most users tend to earn that reputation, given the stupid crap that they do. So, I think it's a community problem that you'll find in any community. It just happens to be a bigger one in Linux because it's a smaller community. So those tend to stick out more like a sore fucking thumb. And, well, as you would say, a gray beard that you kind of want to kick in the head. And you have my sympathies for Fedora. Ugh. I just got done a week of that and never again.
Reason number 3, fragmentation. It's really important to know how Linux is fragmented because many times you look up a program and you get a certain set of commands or a package to download that only works in that version of Linux. And it's really a misconception. Most people get into it and they're just like, what? I'm on Linux, but I don't know what type of Linux I'm on. And, that's why I'm always pointing people to either like Debian or some of the more popular distros because they have a bigger community and can get help. But fragmentation is a big problem, And I get why Linux is fragmented, but it's still a problem nonetheless. And I think that could be solved with a lot more marketing and just general outreach and more community coming together to help new Linux users kind of adopt the operating system, which we just don't see very much. And one of the big points why I made this channel was to help people get them on Linux and actually use it and, enjoy it. And that's the big thing where, a lot of people mess up and they end up distro hopping and just not getting a good experience because of all the fragmentation.
Fragmentation is a thing depending on how you look at it. If you are playing IT support for the person, it really doesn't matter. Point them to a software center. Most of them are going to be idiotic and happy. For me, my take on that is it has its pros, it has its cons. Like you said, I would stick them on, Debian or the more highly known distros as far as like bases. I'm not going to stick somebody on Arch or Solus. Sorry, rolling distro people. That's just me. I think that as soon as people understand the nuances, the differences, because a lot of it is retraining your brain, like the equivalent of an exe for a Debian Linux user is going to be a DEB. It's not the same as far as structure and how it's done and built, and it's different. But when you're explaining something like that to a new user, just tell them that the executable that they're used to clicking, it's not a exe, it's a .deb. That's how I found, or to explain the differences. You give them similarities, you kind of walk them through it, but the biggest thing is, I think, as you stated, marketing is a thing, and that on the flip side, you also have to have either somebody pre-configure the system for you, i.e., buy a machine from Dell, System 76, Zyreason, any of those OEMs, and then you have to have someone willing to support it on that hardware as an outsource, like a person like me or you installing it for that person and kind of getting them going with it. I think that's the key difference, because we have to look at what they need to really answer whether or not they should even be on Linux in the first place.
Reason number 4, familiarity. And what this is I don't mean just, hey, this isn't Windows, I can't get used to it. But software familiarity is a big thing. You got to look at, hey, I've been a Photoshop user for 15 years. I'm not going to just all of a sudden switch over to GIMP because it's free. Hell, I've already paid for, Photoshop CC, and I've had it, and I've already shelled out $1,000. Most people aren't going to just drop that to go to a freeware version that is frankly a little inferior. And that's a big issue, and a lot of Linux users or advocates a lot of times gloss this over and say, well, you can learn it. I'm like, no, not like you're thinking. Most people don't just pick up a new product or a new software and go, oh, well, this is great. It does everything my old software do. I guess I'm just going to learn all this and then use it. Most people pick it up, they look at it and go, okay, well, this is completely different. Forget it. And then they go back to Windows into what they know and, how to work and do their job. So this is a big problem that we have to solve. And I think a lot of that is just porting software over, where it makes it a lot easier on the user to get more familiar with Linux, which I think works better than Windows as far as the OS is concerned. It's easier to operate, in my opinion. And if you get the software that they're used to, you get Photoshop over, you get Microsoft Office. These types of things would help adoption greatly, because it would kind of take away a lot of the problems they're having.
I tend to agree. I think my take on that is you get them on the alternatives first to start. If someone says they want to start photo editing, oh, I guess I need, Photoshop. I just say, oh, if you tell somebody that there's a free program, you don't compare it to Photoshop, because that's just dumb, because it's not. But the way you sell it is the price is free, and it will do a good portion of what Photoshop might do for you. It might not have the same workflow and that kind of thing. But if you point out free alternatives that don't cost them money, they are not going to care. What you do is you stick it on the OS they're using. So that way, really at the end of the day, the underlying OS to them doesn't really matter. It's just an interface change. And God knows how many times Windows has fucking done that. Hello, Windows 8, and getting bitch slapped on both sides of the face with that monstrosity. So I really think it's just, if you are on a Mac or if you're on Windows, and you give them Firefox or Chrome, because those are available on Linux. You give them, say they're looking for, they're looking for not alternatives, but they're looking to get into photo editing or video editing, etc. Give them Lightworks or DaVinci Resolve or Kdenlive, OpenShot, Shotcut. Take your pick. As far as you install those open source applications on the system they're currently using, You can change the base all damn day. They don't care because they can still get to what they need to. That is what the key difference is. We need to get to users early and first, not last and later. And we do too much of that last portion of last and later, and people end up developing workflows and relying on certain applications that we're honestly, until Adobe or a bunch of other companies change their mind, we're just never gonna see.
Reason number 5, lack of hardware and software support. Now, before you guys skewer me here, I know pretty much everything works per se, but does it work well? Just as well, if not better than Windows? And the answer to this is no. And the reason why is because the average day user cannot research and hack around to get the piece of software they want working in Wine, or the piece of hardware like a video recorder or a DSLR or a webcam working the way it works in Windows. A lot of times these setups are far more complex than they should be. And that is a big problem, but one that is getting far better as time goes on. Most of everything I do, I can do in Linux. However, some recording or recording software just doesn't work in Linux as well as it does in Windows. I didn't say right there that it doesn't work at all. I say it just doesn't work as well as Windows. And that's a big difference. I think Linux is caught up to Windows in almost every regard, but this one spot is one place they've made up a ton of ground, but there's still a bit more to go. And that is my 5 reasons why Linux isn't more popular.
Lack of support. Now, if you had said this type of lack of support is more application, this kind of feeds into one of your prior points. I think it's a matter of not so much a OS problem, but an OEM or a insert software here problem as far as the makers. Again, I think a lot of it is we always come to users last and later. We kind of need to change that mentality, and that's a big problem that we don't do, and that's kind of really what hurts us, I honestly think. So that's why I think if we can get to them first and familiar, then they're gonna be fine with you changing out the base OS, because they're not gonna care. I mean, you can tell them, here are some differences, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna care, because can I get, Lightworks? Oh, can I get Resolve? Insert application here. We have to be better advocates for the alternatives first on the platform they're currently on. That's the biggest thing. As far as the OEMs and the software manufacturers and that stuff, that's on them. But in a way, it's kind of on us, because we also need to be better about supporting the companies that do actually support Linux. Reaper being an example, Lightworks, DaVinci, these bigger companies actually do put out good high-end stuff for our platform. We need to support the platform ourselves. We have to eat our own damn dog food. And a lot of the times you'll find that a lot of Linux users aren't willing to do that, because they're just looking to get by. Now that's one of our weaknesses. Oh, it's good enough. No, we need it to be better than just good enough. We're not Google. We're not looking like, Google's mentality with like Google Docs. Oh, it's only got to have 80% of the functionality of Microsoft Office to be a competitor. 80% ain't good enough. We have to be 100% good, and that 100% better than what's currently being offered on the other platforms. And we have to come in first, and we have to make them familiar, or else we're going to keep being last, and we're going to keep getting users later, and we're not going to be able to change their workflow. And then they go back to what they're familiar with. So as far as your top 5 reasons, I can see where you're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with all of them. As far as the points you're making, though, we do have a problem and we do need to fix it. I think marketing is probably our biggest flaw and problem. We have these foundations that do nothing to help promote Linux. I'm looking at you, Linux Foundation. You guys suck at actually promoting the damn desktop. Red Hat, you just got bought for $34 friggin' billion. Guess what? None of that is going to be seen in marketing for Linux or Fedora or Red Hat in the civilian market outside of the enterprise. That's just how it is. And that's on the distro makers, the companies that make the distros, to be not such shitty word of mouth people when it comes to their marketing. Because the only company that's done any marketing whatsoever for Linux has been Canonical. And you can't have one company running the thing when everybody else decides to bash the goddamn thing. So, hey, Red Hat, you might want to crowbar that wallet open and actually start promoting the goddamn desktop. Hey, SUSE, same for you. You know, there are so many companies that while you can contribute code. Awesome. Love you for contributing code. How about you contribute something different than code? Mind equals market share. If we get Linux on people's minds, we get the market share. That's just the way it is. And unfortunately, I don't see any of the companies doing that anytime soon, aside from Canonical. And you guys can say I'm wrong there, but I don't see Red Hat dishing out any $1 billion for fucking marketing anytime soon to the Linux Foundation doing any fucking marketing anytime soon. SUSE, I don't see you doing any fucking marketing anytime soon. Because all you're worried about is enterprise. And end users like me and Chris here, we can basically go get fucked. And to that aspect and that mentality, all I can say is fuck you too.